God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Clark, roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Ms. Madiker? Mr. Shi?
Here.
Ms. Peng? Mrs. White?
Here.
Mr. Mohan Patel?
Here.
Mr. Burrell Patel?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Here.
Dr. Haydock? 6 present.
Thank you. Opening statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Edison Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board of Education administrative offices. Copies of these notices were sent to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger on May 13, 2022. The public may participate at regular meetings in accordance with the bylaws and the applicable state regulations. Okay, welcome everybody. We are here for our Infrastructure Improvement, Facility Improvement Committee of the Whole. I'm very proud to be doing this in public. We have this recorded. If anybody is not here, they certainly can tune in now or after the fact on YouTube, which is a wonderful thing, and obviously on Cablevision. And tonight we are going to be talking about the beginning phases of Phase 1 that Dr. Bragan has done a lot of homework on, and I look forward to hearing your presentation, Dr. Bragan. So without further ado, if you'd like to take the podium.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Board President. I will take the podium.
So while Dr. Bragan is getting situated, just to update the public how this works. So basically, this committee got together. We talked about an overarching view of our facility improvements. We were very agreeable on what direction the district could take on this, and what we've decided to do is give Dr. Bragan the homework to get going on this project, which would be considered Phase 1. And we have a lot of information to digest. So without further ado, Dr. Bragan.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Before we begin to go over this week's presentation, I want to go over a couple of things that we went over from the Capital Improvements Committee that we had on March 30th of 2022. And if the clicker would work, if I turned it on, probably. We had a number of projects we were going to work on covering elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And we talked about doing it in phases. And the priority we had was for Phase 1. Was John P. Stevens High School, Woodrow Wilson Middle School, Herbert Hoover Middle School, John Adams Middle School, Thomas Jefferson Middle School, James Madison Intermediate, and John Marshall Elementary School. For tonight, the beginning of Phase 1, we're going to talk about John P. Stevens, Woodrow Wilson, Herbert Hoover, John Adams Middle School, and Thomas Jefferson Middle School. So I just wanted to touch base on this is what we're presenting on tonight, the priorities that we listed from our meeting on March 30th, right? There were 3 phases. We had up 2 phases and then the annual budgetary enhancements that we had. So we're talking about the beginning of Phase 1 for tonight. Mr. Barker, could you go back to the other slides? You were doing so well, too. Perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, so for tonight, we're going to focus on the start of Phase 1 for the infrastructure improvements that we mentioned again at that meeting we had at the Committee of the Whole on March 30th. So what we basically did was we have 2 architects of record, USA Architects and DMR Architects, and we asked them to come up with proposals. We split the projects between the 2. I'm going to present their very rough ideas that they came forward with tonight, and then we'll talk about it, and then hopefully after this meeting, the board will give me some direction to follow up with them, and at some point bring something back to the board that we would have to vote on and approve as we move forward. So the first ones I'm presenting are the renderings, the ideas from USA Architects and their proposals. John P. Stevens High School, we talked about it at the last meeting, the immediate need. There are several needs, but the most pressing need there is classroom space. As we know, we've had those conversations for a number of previous board meetings and how that impacts the number of classes we're allowed to afford and things like that. So we know that's obviously a pressing need. So at John P. Stevens, and it's hard to see on the screen, this will be on the website tomorrow, and I have copies for the board members at the tables there as well. This is going to be a 3-story structure, and if you're facing John P. Stevens, when you pull into the driveway, you make a right, and then you come around the back as you're going towards the tennis courts. The tennis courts would be over here, back here. This is the parking lot. This is the existing structure right here. This is the art wing right here. So USA's proposal to put in 27 classrooms is a 3-story structure. It's going to be connected here to the art wing, come through here. There'll be stairways here, and this is 3 stories of a structure, okay? This would be the classroom space. Now, this is just fleshed out. We could delineate, there's 9 classrooms on a floor. That would be 27 classrooms. We could decide how we want this classroom space to be. How many of those we want to be labs? Do we want to have flexible spaces? Do we want to have large areas that can be broken down into smaller areas? All that can be determined at a later date. Again, this is a rough idea, so we can give one of our architects marching orders to go forth and come up and solidify their plan, okay? Just a rendering of what that stairway would look like from their proposed drawings. And this is what the building would look like. Again, the structure here would be the present building. I think there's shop classes down here, and this is where our art classes would be. This would be the connector. That's a 1-story connector. There's the stairwell, and that would be the 3-story structure. Just one more thing on this one here. This does take parking spaces. Right now, there's parking lot here. So we would lose some parking spaces here. The initial proposal was to put any classroom addition in the front of the building. That's probably the cheapest way to do it, in the front, and have the 3-story structure there. It would impact our performance. Some of our athletic facilities and our band use that as well, and it probably wouldn't be the most appealing when you pull into the campus to have that. It would look like a standalone that was out there. So the rough idea for the costs, as you can see, for the 27 classrooms, it's 41,970 square feet. The low-end cost would be 22 million, and the high-end cost would be 24,500,000. It's more than we initially anticipated when we put this together, but what we're finding is, and I don't know if you've noticed this in your own lives, but everything is more expensive now. When things that used to be $400 a square foot are coming in much more. So at the end, we'll talk about the overall prices. My recommendation, again, and only a recommendation to the board, would be let's overestimate, because one of the worst things you want to do is approve a project, get it spec'd out, get it designed, and then go out to bid and realize that the bids are all significantly over what you had budgeted for that. All right, so this is one idea.
Dr. Reagan, can I interrupt you? People are asking where the link is.
It should be on the homepage, Mr. McDonald, the link for the meeting, right? Yeah.
It's on the district website?
It's on, yes, on the community tab on ESNTV.
All right,
Link for the meeting or link for the presentation?
for the meeting.
Okay.
The link for the presentation is not up yet. We'll do that
No,
after the
yeah,
meeting.
I know.
Mr. Barker, I know you're in listening space too. Could you just double check that that's on our homepage? I'm sure he'll take care of that. So, again, the recommendation would be, and we'll talk at the end, is that we would go with the high-end estimate just to cover ourselves in case when we go out to bid, we don't want to sell ourselves short. All right, the other thing that USA Architects looked at was as we talked about from the plan on March 30th, was to look at the large area spaces and auxiliary gymnasium spaces at our middle schools. So USA looked at John Adams. If you take a look here at John Adams, this is this structure here. This is the road where you'd come in. That's the covering where the buses let the children in. This is basically the building here. We're looking at this back corner over here, okay? And the first option is basically just to put a gymnasium there, some mechanical rooms that would have to be there in storage, but it's basically another large area space that could be a gymnasium. It could be an overflow cafeteria for lunchtime and things like that. Option 2 would include that space and another little kitchen area. You know, one of the things that we get from our food service provider is we get some guaranteed reimbursements at the end of the year. And those monies can be used to purchase things that are important for the kitchen and mechanical equipment and things like that. But what they can't be used for is any construction such as this. So there was an idea that we put forth, was if some of these large space gym areas, we also added what's called a warming kitchen, a place where we could have other kitchen spaces and maybe have kids get more food there as well. So that's option 2. Option 3 includes that, as well as locker rooms and a stage area, okay? And they were given the charge to come up with the different options. So the differentiation, as with most things, the more you ask for, the more it costs, right? So if you look at the option of the gym only, that would be the $3.5 million. Again, that's the high estimate. And that's what we initially budgeted and we talked about. If you add that warming kitchen space, that would be $4.6 million. And if you add the gym, the warming kitchen, the stage, and the locker rooms, it comes in at $6.6 million. Woodrow Wilson Middle School, the same type of area we would do there. If you look at Woodrow Wilson here, this is Woodrow Wilson Drive, the road that comes in down here. As you enter into the parking lot, our staff parking is here and here. We're looking at this back section here as you get into the fields, and the path over there runs back over to Woodbrook. So this is the section we're talking about here on the building. Option one would be similar to what we had before, just the large area space, basically the auxiliary gym, some storage and mechanicals, and obviously you need a connector to connect to the existing building. Option two has that space and then the addition of the warming kitchen, similar to the one we just talked about. And option three has the auxiliary gym, the warming kitchen, the mechanicals, the locker rooms, and as well as a stage area. And you'll see the prices are similar there. For the auxiliary gym alone is $3.5 million. With the warming kitchen is $4.6. And with the warming kitchen, stage, and locker rooms, it comes to $7.4. Now you may ask, why is that one more than it was for John Adams? Every site's a little different. There's more involved in the structure and what you have to do to get it up to grade and to connect it to the existing building. That's why sometimes things are a little off. And as I told our architects, in preliminary planning, to overestimate. I'd rather estimate more and have the savings at the end that we don't have the money than underestimate and find us scrambling around to find out how to fund these projects halfway through. All right, so the next one we went to DMR, another one of our architects of record, and the first thing that they looked at was John P. Stevens. They came up with a little bit of a different plan. So if you take a look at this structure here, it's the same thing. This is the existing shop rooms. This is going out into the art rooms here. And instead of coming out and going this way, which was the other proposal, they chose to go lengthwise. You're going to lose parking spots either way, and we have to determine where we're going to put those additional parking after we finish. But one thing they do, it's 3 stories. Their proposal includes 10 classrooms on each story, so that's 30 classrooms in total. And they have a connector here to this hallway, and they have a connector here to create kind of a flow-through. Right? So if you remember, the one we had from USA was coming out this way, and it was an in and out through this way. Okay? This will entail hitting this road back here, moving it back a little bit, which is going to impact the first row of tennis courts here we would have to address afterwards as well. So for that one, their cost came in at $24,300,000 was the low cost, and the high cost was $25,700,000 for a total of 30 additional classrooms. And again, those classrooms, in the same as we said with the USA proposal, they're not etched in concrete where we can't have flexibility. As we got farther on in the planning stages with input from our instructional staff and our administrators, we would decide what kind of classrooms they would be. And, most likely there'd be a variety of different styles and different classrooms. And I would recommend we have the flexibility, too, to sometimes remove walls, open or close, make large learning areas, and then, section it off when you need smaller group learning. 48,000 square feet, and that would be the cost as they're presented there. All right, the next charge we had for DMR was Herbert Hoover Middle School. And again, with the middle schools, we were looking at that auxiliary gym space. If you know the Hoover site at all, it's very tight. There's not a lot of ground around it. This would be Jackson Avenue over here. This is the Little League field right here. The old VFW is over here. This is our maintenance garage area. We just put in an additional parking area for buses over here. So they're looking to go off this back here where we have staff parking. Actually, some part right here is where we have those wetlands containers that are soon to be removed. And this is where they came off. It would connect here. It's primarily just a gym space. They didn't add locker rooms. They didn't add the warming kitchens. I'll talk about that at the very end. But that's where this structure would be. And the cost for that The low cost was $4 million and the high cost was 4.35. It's about 7,700 square feet for the gym area only. Now, I did talk to the architects from DMR. If we wanted to add a warming kitchen to that space, that would be an additional $450,000. Thomas Jefferson Middle School. Now, this is a building that we talked about last time. Could use a little bit of TLC, as my dad used to say. So one of the things we wanted to do here was the large area space, as we want to do with all of our middle schools. And this one's a little bit unique here. In their current gym, they use it as a cafeteria during lunchtime as well. They have a stage over here. So part of this renovation would include demolishing that stage to make this area larger to accommodate some of the lunchroom time. And adding the stage here as part of this gym would give you a larger space for your productions, and it would be obviously newer and a nicer area. You have to make the connections over here to the building, which they did. There's also renovations for the security and entrance here, as well as the offices. And their estimate for that project came in total, 14,600 square feet. Again, the low end was 7.1 million, and the high end was 7.75 million. And you can see the different costs there. For the gym auditorium, it's 10,600 square feet. The entrance and security vestibule is about 1,000 square feet. To renovate the existing cafeteria, which is basically the demolition of that stage that's there, they would have to move that great picture of Thomas Jefferson. We would put that somewhere else, obviously, along with the bust of Thomas Jefferson. And the renovation of the existing administrative office areas is about 1,700 square feet. All right, so here's some decisions that we need to make as a board. And again, I don't think we anticipated voting on anything tonight, but having discussions. John P. Stevens additions, which architect firm would we want to go to? I think we're lucky that we have two high caliber agencies that we have as architects of record that put forth some really good plans. For Woodrow Wilson and John Adams, which option would we want to go with? We have a variety of options there at different costs. The Herbert Hoover Auxiliary Gym, do we want to do it or do we not? And the Thomas Jefferson Auxiliary Gym with those renovations, do we want to do some of it, all of it, none of it? Those would be the decisions we want to make. So if you take a look at the projected costs, you could see for both of the architects at John P. Stevens, the costs are between $24.5 million and $25.7 million. One gives you 27 classrooms and one provides 30 classrooms. The initial budgeted amount that we put aside when we put our proposal was $17 million. So obviously that's higher than that. For John Adams Middle School and Woodrow Wilson Middle School, the lowest cost option, which is just the gym without the warming kitchens, the stage, or the locker rooms, was $3.5 million each, which is what we budgeted, which was $7 million for those. Herbert Hoover with the presented option only, without the warming kitchen, which I said could be added, and it could be added at Thomas Jefferson too. I'm sorry, I missed that, for $450,000. Is $4.3 million, 4.35. We budgeted 3.5. And the Thomas Jefferson project with the presented option is $7.75 million, and we had budgeted 5.5. So the total cost, depending on which of the John P. Stevens projects we went with, from what's presented there, is around $40 million or $41 million, and we budgeted 33. When I say budgeted, it's what we talked about at that first meeting when we had our initial discussions about this on March 30th. So at this point, I would open up to, I guess, the board or public discussion, and probably the board first, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, with this being a working committee meeting, anybody can just jump in as long as we maintain some sort of order, that'd be great. But if anybody has any thoughts, feel free. I'll lead it off though, my first question. I see that we're over budget on this, and phase one of this project, which we had talked about initially, was the 4 middle schools, the J.P. Stevens project, and then in addition, John Marshall and JMI, is that correct?
JMI, classroom space.
So if we're shooting over budget with this first part of this first phase, my ask of you, Dr. Bragan, is just to make sure that while I'm confident we could find the money to do this first phase, we have to keep in mind that we still have classrooms to add at these other buildings in this first phase, right? So how what we're talking about tonight impacts those two additional parts of this first phase is important, I think.
I would agree totally, and we want to make sure we get the dollars and cents right. We're in the process of We haven't done it yet, but we're putting together an RFP for our financial advisor as well as a bond broker and bond counsel. And I think it's important because when we get those people on board, they can answer those financing questions and we'll be a little more tighter. These are rough ideas. These are me and the two architects sitting down talking about potential prices. You know, when the rubber meets the road is when you really get a project fully spec'd out, fully drawn, and then we go out for proposals and we'll have a better understanding. Unfortunately, though, I do believe the trend of increasing costs is not going to go away anytime soon, and I think we need to plan for that. Even though these came in, if you looked at the proposal, around $7 to $8 million higher than what we anticipated, there's room in that budget for this type of, what's the word I want to look for, over expenditure or for growth of what the projects would cost. So I don't think proceeding with these projects in year one would in any way take us away from continuing the projects in the future. We may have to finance them a different way, and it may take a little bit longer to pay it off. You know, if you remember the first time we presented this, year 4, everything would be paid for. Year 5, everything would be paid off.
You know, when I'm looking at these projects, let's just take JP Stevens. I think we should probably lead the conversation with JP Stevens first before diving into almost anything else. So I'm looking at the two, and I'm seeing that the USA Architects, I see some main differences here. I see USA decided to come out from the building in a horizontal fashion as we're looking at this paper, whereas DMR was more vertical in its alignment of the new building versus the old one. I don't know if horizontal and vertical are the right architectural terms, but I think everybody gets what I'm saying. And I also noticed that a big difference is that there's 27 classrooms with less square footage with USA, and 30 classrooms with more square footage with DMR. Now, I calculated the price per square foot because I always think that's important, right? Mm-hmm. The price per square foot, if my math is correct, I don't know if anybody else did this, but was about $583 a square foot for USA and $535 for DMR. So I see approximately a $50 per square foot difference. When you're talking about 48,000 square feet, $50 a square foot's a lot of money. So am I missing something in the different, so am I accurate in that?
Completely accurate.
All right. Now, the other thing I see is, or the question I have is that do these costs include soft costs? Or is this just a hard cost and then we're paying a percentage on top of this?
Total cost. I put in, they did present, you know, the costs that didn't include the soft costs, the architectural fees, the engineering fees, the furniture and things like that. I gave you the full cost. The soft costs are all included.
So the $535 per square foot using the DMR number, that's not actually the building cost, that's including everything. Mm-hmm. All soft costs including.
Correct.
Okay.
And a contingency for increase in costs.
Right. In your experience, are these numbers pretty accurate? Or, I mean, I know supply chain and things change, and I won't hold you to it, and I know you're on camera and everybody's listening, but is it typically that they're sharpening? I'm not saying we're trying to strike a bargain here, but how accurate are these numbers at this point?
I would say two things. One, in my lifetime, I remember it was $100 per square foot,
Yeah.
so these numbers are appalling to me. But that being said, that's the world in which we live, and I think they do account for potential increases and contingencies that would come up in the 18 months it's going to take for us to bring these projects to fruition. And all you have to do really, though, is look back at the project at the Lincoln Elementary School that we started 2 years ago, and we budgeted $9 million for that project. It's about that. You know, it may be a little over that for different things that we had to run into and problems, but for what we thought it would cost when we went out to bid on that, and again, even then it wasn't post-pandemic where the prices increased as much as they did. They anticipated contingencies and things would go wrong and you'd have to have extra monies for this, that, and the other thing. And this board knows we had to make some adjustments, right, with some delays in materials and all that. And we're still coming in pretty close to where we were. So I would say with any building project in my personal life as well as in my professional life, expect to pay more because everything costs more. But I think this is close to where it would be, and I think it's a realistic ballpark. I don't think they purposely came in to lowball us. and then 5 years down the line say, well, you know what, that 25 million is really 32. I don't believe that. I think it's fairly accurate.
Now, to remind people, the purpose of this first phase was to triage the classroom situation. We have a space problem. I think, to paraphrase what you said in the beginning of the presentation, this classroom addition at J.P. Stevens is now on the side of the building versus in the front, because the front, if we put it there, while it might be less expensive to do that today, long-term it would prohibit us from doing things like more amenities in the front of the building, the lobby area, aesthetically pleasing renovation, auditorium, et cetera. Am I hearing you correctly on that? And then it also would impact the marching band and the activities that go on in that area as well.
All that, and it would
Right.
also impact more of the daily operation of the school. You know, none of these projects are going to take place in the summer, right? You can't complete them when the children aren't in there. So these are going to be ongoing construction sites for a period of 12 to 24 months. The side gives us a more opportunity to isolate the area and be more effective during the school day than the front. The front is where everybody comes in and out, and it would cause more of a disruption.
I know the answer to this. I'm going to ask it anyway. Air conditioning, this entire area, correct?
Yeah,
That's included.
Yes, any building addition that we do and that I've been a part of since my administrative career has included HVAC, right? I don't know, even in your own homes, of any construction that's taken place in the last 20, 30 years that doesn't include, climate-controlled spaces. All of these do include that.
Board member comments on J.P. Stevens?
So, Dr. Bragan, we saw this in the PowerPoint slide. If you can please share the actual diagram with all of us, it'll be helpful.
I will definitely do that,
Okay.
and we'll also put the PowerPoint on the website tomorrow. I apologize because when I tried to get some of the blueprint, they're big size drawings down to size that you can put them on the PowerPoints or the Google Slides. It's hard sometimes you lost some of that acuity. So I can definitely get the drawings for the.
Okay, and the numbers are like really close to what we can think estimates, right? It's not something that is signed a contract with the architect. It's just estimates at this point, right?
Correct.
All the numbers.
Correct. But again, it's always an estimate, but I do think they're fairly accurate for a couple of reasons. One is it doesn't behoove the architect to come in really low, and if this is consistent pattern when they do that, why would we continue to use them, right? So I get that. I think they're fairly accurate. I think they built in what they anticipate would be increases moving forward due to supply shortages and the economy and the inflation that we would normally see over the next 12 months. So I do think they're accurate. I do. But again, it's an estimate, as you said, Mr. Patel.
Yes, Dr. Haydock.
Just a few quick questions, maybe to catch me up to speed. You said about parking space loss. Is there a current issue with that topic with the staff?
Have you been to JP, Dr. Hayden?
So-
There is not enough spaces for the children, for the staff. It's an ongoing issue. We have 2,700 students, another 200 and so staff coming every day. It's difficult to manage, and it's an ongoing issue. Losing these spots will hurt. We'll have to find another area where we can do that. And the problem at John P. Stevens, everyone that knows that facility, is it's surrounded, it's actually part of wetlands. So you can't really take over much of that land, but we have some ideas on what we can
Okay.
do. I don't want to speak publicly because I don't want to commit to it, but there are ways we can get those parking spaces back.
Right. And you said the athletics and arts will lose some space. Obviously, those advisors, those administrators in charge of that have been part of your plan. Is there any way to find some space for those guys too? Has the architect thought of some other things besides the parking?
Yeah, well, did I say we would lose some art space?
No.
If you look at this one here, and I don't know if it's probably not a great drawing, but for this to be here, the road's going to come a little further around because you can't make that turn right there, right? There has to be a certain amount of safety space. So when it comes out farther here, this is the end of the tennis court, if you can visualize it. So we're going to lose some of the tennis courts here. If you ask me the estimate, it's about the size of one of the courts. So we'll have to find out how to do that. We may move the entire court somewhere else at some point, but that hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
It will impact this tennis court,
Right.
and this
Yeah,
road
that's obvious.
this road's like over here now. It has to come a little longer over this way to make a safe turn there.
Board President,
Yes.
Reagan, when we were discussing the JP Stevens plans, in regards to the tennis courts, we were thinking about turning them the other way around so that we don't lose any tennis courts, plus get the gain of the space that we need. And by doing the road the way we have it, it would actually make it much more easier for us to build in the future the science wing that we were looking to do as well. Right now, what we have is trailers. The whole road is all screwed up because you have in the middle of the parking lot, you have a trailer, you have a dumpster, you have all these obstacles that are
Don't forget the
currently
crater.
and the craters too, right? Well,
That was a joke.
they're somewhat
We
fixed right
fixed it.
now.
Yeah.
Somewhat fixed. So in regards to those plans that DMR presented last year, there are some good points that we could actually adapt in these new plans, and it would help us to continue with what we're doing right now with these plans that they have presented, because that will allow us to build into the future. We're right now just putting lipstick on the pig. I understand it, because future, there's going to be growth and whatever else. You still haven't addressed the auditoriums or anything else that we're needing to do, which by far is going to get utilized more than anything else too. So we're just taking the bare minimum for JP Stevens right now. I get it, but doing it horizontal versus vertical, you're going to basically mess up the plan if you want to, I feel like, if you want to expand in the future. So what I'm thinking is, in regards to addressing another issue was the flow, right? So the traffic flow versus and the ventilation and so forth. I think DMR plan gives you that option to give that flow and get the ventilation you need versus the other one. The other one is a beautiful staircase. I love it, right? But that doesn't give us the space and everything else we need. It's a wonderful staircase, by the way. But that's not what we need. We need the classrooms and the flow. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Patel. I think the DMR plan seems to make a lot more sense. I don't know what I'm missing. So it seems per square foot, it's less expensive. It seems like it's 3 more classrooms. It obviously has some synergy with the previous plan that was worked hard on. What am I missing?
And, well, President, I think
Yeah,
you
Mr. Shi.
got everything, because you're saying who was, doing all the calculations. That's the thing I was doing, doing the calculations per square footage. You're right on the money on the per square footage cost. And Gail's sitting right over here. And, when we visit JP Stevens, right now there are 2 bottlenecks, right? So the plan, the first plan is not addressing those 2 bottlenecks. With this, you're adding 2 circulation points that will help with the circulation in the building. And I'm not a big fan of you take this building, put it horizontal or vertical, whatever you want to call it. It's coming way too much into the space of the parking lot. Yes, we are losing some parking lot, but if you actually expand the road to the back, we can put some parking lots to the other side, just like
100%.
was their plan. So those parking lots we will gain all those parking lots, plus probably a little bit more if we do a better plan with the road back there. And the other thing is, if you look at all these schools, what we're doing, we're expanding gyms and so on. And we have not talked about expanding JP Stevens gym yet, but we all know JP Stevens gym is probably more crowded than anything else. So, I think if you actually have this plan, it will help. If you add a gym to the back, it will help to make it more look a little bit nicer. And if you have other things that you can connect to, because you can leave the end on the top as open. If we need to add additional things, you can connect back to whatever on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's just my take on this. Because whenever we talk about adding additions and stuff, the architects, they will always leave up a space where you can put additions. So I think with this one, it's a little bit easier to add on top of that if down the road we have some extra money who want to do it. So I'm in favor of this one. So that's my point for the JP Stevens, because to me, the circulation is very, very important. Right now, there are 2 bottleneck in there, and with the other plans not addressing them.
Yep, Mr. Rivera.
So I completely agree with the circulation. So are these just 2 points on on the first floor? There's no other on the second? You know what I'm talking about? The 2 connections into the main building? Is that just the first floor, or is there other connections on the second floor?
That's a great question.
Like, for me,
'Cause-
that's the
but
ultimate
I
circulation.
got the answer.
There is no.
There's no connection on the second or third floor because there is no
one story.
second or
That's
third
right.
floor.
All right.
This is a one-story.
Yeah.
It's a great question, though, and that's why it's not delineated here. These are one-story structure here. So we could put it on the second or third, but that might be a little dangerous having the kids jump back and forth.
All right.
I'm
I
just
take that back
kidding.
then.
I'm
I
just
thought it was
kidding.
doubled.
And, no, that's a great question. You can't really tell from the drawings here, and I don't have a rendering that we asked them to do it pretty quickly just to put something together. But I want to comment on Mr. Shi and Mr. Mohan Patel's comments about the flow. That makes sense. And this structure here, it tends to, I'm not an architect by no means, but it tends to flow in better with the overall structure of the building to begin with, as you go around the building and as you look at it aesthetically as well. When the USA plan, as they connected here and came out this way, one of the reasons it's 27 classrooms as opposed to 30 is because they would have had to go out a little bit further, and it was too far. It stuck out farther than this building, and it just wasn't appropriate. You can't have it here, coming this far out. So that's what limited them to only put 27 classrooms instead of 30. I would concur with what everybody said. This seems like the most appropriate option. And if for nothing else, from a cost-effective perspective, you're getting the most bang for your buck, and that seems to make sense.
Dr. Bregan, so I don't know if there can make, this is, I forgot where the original design was. The original design didn't have these 2 connection parts there's a corridor in the middle of it. So is there any way, I don't know if they can get it a little closer, so if down the road we add gym, we add other spaces, just like Brian said, we can possibly put a second level, go on the other side to have another circulation. I don't know if just throw it out there and just maybe a dumb idea,
We could ask them for that. I think the other, you're talking about the SSP plan from a couple of years ago, had a large space here.
Yeah.
Both
Even
SSP
the plan we had last year.
Yeah,
Had a
DMR,
large
Yeah.
multi-space here that connected everything,
Yeah.
so that added that other flow. I mean, the future is what it is.
Yeah.
I think this plan gives us an opportunity to grow, and however we decide to best do that in the future.
If I could add,
Mr. Patel.
that plan that they had last year would have been aesthetically pleasing as well, and it would have added extra additional value to homes in Edison, in North Edison, at least because of the school there. But you know what? You want to go to a school that looks more modern and more, appealing. We're just putting lipstick on the pig, so that's all we're doing right now. Thank you.
I do think that, we had unanimous agreement, the original committee meeting we had here, that this is definitely phase 1. And I think that, to all of your points, I think we have a consensus here that this plan allows us to build upon this plan. This is just the first part of this particular part of the building. And then as we build along, I think there's probably benefit as well to working with DMR, as they were the ones that worked on this last year. So there would be a lot of intimate knowledge that another architect wouldn't necessarily have. Do we have consensus on DMR, Ms. White?
Yes, I like DMR. I like this very much, and it's a beginning. And we have to start somewhere. We can grow with this, and, I think it's a really good start. And we're starting with a whole bunch of we need classrooms so badly. I think this is a very, very good beginning.
Well, President.
Yeah, Mr. Shi.
I forgot to ask this question. When they did all these drawings for all the schools here, did architects actually spoke to the building principals as to what they think about their proposal? Are they okay with it? Or they're, 'cause I think it's better off they speak to them first.
Yeah.
And they got their blessing, then we come here and say, yeah, it's okay. Otherwise, we approve on something, they say, it's not gonna work.
That's a great question.
That was your job, Dr. Brake.
I think you threw me that softball. That wasn't even a plan. Yeah, of course we did. We spoke to the administrators of the team. We
Okay.
got some input from some of the teachers. And I actually heard some of the concerns from teachers when we were looking at that room. There's a storage room that connects by one of the shop rooms that they used that, and they wanted to make sure they would have access to it. So we 100% And I know DMR has spent a lot of time in that building with the
course.
administration, walking around.
Yeah.
And USA Architects with Pete Camposano and his associates, I forget his name, we spent time with myself, and then they went with the administrators on site, and they did contact some teachers, and I heard some feedback as well. That's when I heard about the problems with that parking lot. The teachers were very comfortable coming in and telling me what they thought about us repairing that parking lot space that I referred to as the crater.
Very good.
As long as they don't pick a red turf field, I'm okay with it.
No red, no red.
Does anyone have anything else on JP Stevens before we move on to the next project?
I don't like it.
Okay. Next one I have here is the John Adams Middle School, the JAMS Gymnasium. You know, the three options, if you go to the last slide of the JAMS auxiliary gym option costs. Option 1, gym only. Option 2, gym and warming kitchen. Option 3, gym, warming kitchen, stage, and locker rooms. I have a couple thoughts on this. The first thing is we have a terrific food service provider right now who's very competent. They provide our students with excellent service and food, in my opinion. So much so this board has extended them, you know, their contract, and they have a budget. So just to remind everybody, they have a budget to reinvest into the district. They are not allowed to just build things. They can't just build a kitchen for us, but they could certainly take a kitchen that we have, let's just say 4 walls, some plumbing, some power, and then put their equipment in. And, you know, in the food service business, the equipment is a lot of money. So that would come out of their allowance that they are reinvesting into the district. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point. And, you know, so in a nutshell, what I'd like to see is at all times, especially in those buildings that it's very much needed, we try really hard to put what you're calling a warming kitchen. Now, the definition of warming kitchen for us is basically 4 walls, plumbing, and power, and then they come in and do all the equipment and
Correct.
everything that's needed to actually operate, right? So, you know, their hands will be tied, whether it's Machio's or another food service provider down the road after all of, you know, there's different people sitting in these seats. Certainly, without the 4 walls, it's tough to invest. So I would like personally to see us really think long and hard and hopefully approve for these buildings, these shell kitchens, if we can. Because I think, let's just say with JAMS, it looks to me like a $1.1 million you know, addition. However, I'm confident the food service provider will be investing more than that in what they're doing on top of our investment. Mr. Patel.
Yes, I agree with you in regards to that. What you're going to do is you're doing the cost at this moment. You don't want to have it come again, and then there's additional cost for drawings and everything. So one shot, one deal, do the 6.6, get all the things that we need at the moment, and just move forward so we don't have to worry about it down the line.
So with that said, Dr. Bragan, talk a little bit about JAMS specifically in terms of their needs. You know, their gym is obviously in disrepair. They need, you know, not only to repair that gym, but also the additional auxiliary will be great. The kitchen, if we decide that it's a good idea. What about the stage? I know that they have a stage in their current cafeteria, correct?
They do. They
So
do.
talk a little bit about that, what their needs are, what you think.
You know, I think the stage area they have there is adequate and it works, but, you know, it's not as nice as something when we put that was newer. You know, one of the things that they have in that room that doubles as a cafeteria is there's not a lot of room in there. You know, I was in there a couple times a few months ago during lunchtime, and it's really crowded. And part of that's they're limited by the structure of the kitchen and where they come in and out with the prepared food. And there's only so many students that could come in and out, you know, the egresses as they are now. So the warming kitchen would definitely add to that, having the option of having another service area in the building. It takes half the students from the one area and another. You know, there's some logistical concerns that you have to deal with that, right? We have to have coverage and make sure we have everything, staffing there to have people in 2 areas, but I think we could figure that out. And our staff are always great in coming up with ideas to do that. So, you know, I think that's a decision that the board would make, as Mr. Mohan Patel said a few times, putting lipstick on a pig. I personally have no experience with that, so I can't speak to it. But going all in and doing all the infrastructure needs now, you get everything out there, you get it done. Maybe we go back and see if they could sharpen their pencils and come in lower than 6.6 million. I don't know. When I got the numbers, the prices seemed really high to me. As I said, I'm as old as I've ever been, and when I look at a price of $535 a square foot, it almost gives me some agita. But that's the world we live in right now. So could they get away without it? Yes, they could. They really need the large area space, and at some point they need classroom space at John Adams as well. This would help. It would help them, though. It would help ease things in that building, and it would be better. But there's a cost, right? You're going from 3.5, 4.6, 6.6. That's a lot of money.
You should be saying buy two, get one free, or just say with
We'll
this
give you a
comes
free one.
this. So we could ask, and that's all we can do, right? So instead of saying, okay, you know what, you want to get this project for the gym, the kitchen, warming kitchen, but put the stage and the locker rooms for free, and it's all good too. They could do it.
For free.
Well,
I would go with two.
let me ask you this: is there middle school locker rooms? How vital? To me, if I were to prioritize, I'm a layman, right? I got middle school kids myself. I can't remember the last time they utilized a locker room in the traditional sense, like when I was in school. What would be the? Is that for when we have athletic events and the team has a place to meet?
it's-
And
Right now, an auxiliary gym is a gym only, right? It's just another large area space for students to
Right.
congregate for whatever need, for lunchtime, physical education classes, assembly type things. It's another large space. Without locker rooms, though, it's not an additional entire gym period space. While kids very rarely shower in middle school, if at all, I'm not sure they do at high school anymore either, as we used to do after practice, they do need to change, right? For phys ed, children typically change into their gym clothes at middle school, and they need a place to do that. So those locker rooms provide that opportunity. So if you had the locker rooms, you have an entire separate facility in that building to conduct an entire gym period. Right? The kids come, they change, they come out, they go back, they change and go back to class. If you just have a gym, it's an auxiliary space, right? So at some point, the children are still going to be in the area that they currently use to change their clothes during phys ed class, and then they have to walk down the hallway, to the class. So I think for the locker room space, that's the differentiation. It becomes an entirely separate space that the kids don't have to, walk from one area to the other.
It also gives you the additional bathrooms or lavatories that
Correct.
you want to put in there as well. So.
yeah, I mean, if I were to, looking at it, to me, that's the least important part of this entire slide. However, I think you've made a good argument to justify the need for it. So, I mean, I know the devil's in the details and it all comes down to money. But if we have, this board, not this year, but this year and the previous years has worked at 0% increase, but also we're now on the precipice of not having debt. We're about to appoint a bond counsel, with the RFQ. I think it would be appropriate to be able to stretch and spend if we can.
Well, President.
Yes, Mr. Shi.
So, Dr. Bregan, I look at this John Adams drawing. The warm kitchen is sticking out on the side, right? So, is there a plan to use a gym of some sort of a cafeteria, or?
Yes, if we
it
do that.
is? Okay.
The idea would be, as I was saying with John Adams' space and many of these spaces, is to provide that time during lunch periods where they can have lunch in this area as well, because of the overcrowded areas where they currently have it at John Adams in that multi-purpose auditorium space they use now. It's tight. It's hard to serve the lunches. It's hard to get kids in and out of there in the 22 minutes, whatever the time it is they have for middle school lunch. And this, if you could do it without the kitchen, but it's a lot more difficult. You're going to have kids walking down the hall with their lunch. If you got the serving area, warming area, kitchen area, you have two spaces to have lunch. Now, as I said earlier, that requires a little bit of logistical management because now I have staff that have to supervise children in different spaces, but I'm confident we could figure that out.
So I would assume the current stage area will be demolished and that will be used as cafeteria space.
Could do that, but then if you do that, the staging area in the current place, then,
But since you're gonna build a stage here. and
oh, the
what's-
stage, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
stage.
yeah. So
I
what's
heard staging, I
I'm
thought you
sorry,
meant the
yeah,
food.
stage, yeah. So we'll gain some space over there, right?
We didn't, that's a good point. I don't know if that's in the original plan to demo that area of the original stage, if we were gonna add this one, but, that would be something we would talk about. We did that,
Okay.
that's in the plan for Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Because when I talked, with DMR about that, that was what they presented, and it made sense to me. But what you're saying, Mr. Shi, makes sense if we're gonna go with this type of plan at John Adams or at Woodrow Wilson. The current area that they have, we would renovate to make it bigger, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I don't know how much they can put it in. And the other thing, at the end of the day, it's gonna cost money. So I'm looking at the connection part over here. Right now, there's 2 storage areas, right? And we know John Adams is a 2-story building.
Correct.
So can we put a couple of classrooms on the 2nd floor? And on the other side of the hallway, because it's open space there, is it possible we can put a couple of classrooms on the other side as well to increase, to get a couple of classroom out of this?
In this area you're talking about here?
Yes, yes. And on top of that.
Yeah. I'm not as familiar with that footprint to speak to it knowledgeably.
I
but
don't know how big it is and how
Yeah,
big
yeah,
the
but
classroom
it's
can be. and
worth, it's worth looking into.
But at the
We'll
end of the
find
day,
out.
it's a cost.
Like everything, right?
Yeah.
But I think if we ask that question and decide, let's say they come back and say, yeah, you can do that for, I'm making up a number, 3-4 million, bring it to the board and see if it's worth doing. I think that's something we should ask and find out and get as much done as we possibly can. But I think we have to be cognizant too that there's only so much money, right? We don't want to spend it all in phase 1 and
Yeah.
then phase 2 just fizzles because there are other needs. But these are the most pressing needs.
And the 2 locker rooms is possible, they can put it over there, then you can have a classroom on top of that, so you don't sticking out. I don't know how you have a lot of space in the back. There are some spaces, I don't know how close is it gonna be.
This area was the
Side.
easiest when we look at that footprint.
Yeah.
If you know back there now, there's a paved part there. It's a
Yeah.
concrete area there in the
Yeah.
back. So this was the easiest and the least impactful to add to.
Yeah,
But those questions, I can go back and see what other plans we can come
Okay.
up with.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I'm just looking at all 4 middle schools. So I noticed with the US architects, we were looking at gym, warming, kitchen, staging, locker rooms, all that. For the other 2, do we have enough space if we wanted to add a stage to Hoover or warming areas for any of these 2?
Well, Hoover was a different area, and that's one of the conversations that I had with the architects, is that it doesn't have a lot of area there. So they initially didn't put those other things in, and I had conversations with the DMR representatives today, and they informed me that, I'm trying to find Hoover, that they can add the warming kitchen for a cost of $450,000 to this model here. I'm not sure where it would go. I don't have that drawing, whether that would be over here, over here. I'm not really sure. There's a baseball field here, a Little League field here,
yeah.
and this backs up into the garage area. I have to look at that footprint. I don't know what their plan was, but they said that we could add the warming kitchen for $450,000. But I don't think there's a space there for locker rooms because you're already taking some parking space here that you'd have to add over here, which is close to the building. That road is used by our buses in the morning when they come in.
How about a stage?
Hoover actually has a decent stage.
Yeah.
You know, their area over here is pretty effective. So it's in their cafeteria. If you know that space,
space is
Brian,
pretty
you
nice.
didn't go to Hoover, did you?
Uh,
You went to
no.
TJ. Yeah, we won't hold that against you. But if you go down the steps here, it's like sunken in where the cafeteria is, and it works out pretty well. And this is the stage area, so I don't think that's as pressing a need at Herbert Hoover.
Okay, so I just want to keep us a little organized here. John Adams.
Yes.
To wrap up
Just-
John Adams, it sounds to me.
Board President?
Yes.
Just a quick question for John Adams.
Yeah.
Did we have another drawing from DMR for them, or this is just from USA for them?
We did it. What we did at this juncture is we split it. We said we gave 2 schools to USA and we gave 2 to DMR. And part of that was for us to discuss the differences and as we move forward, who does it, what are people's expertises in different areas and see what they come up with. As, this board has told me over time that competition is good for us, right? It
Yes.
breeds that
Yes.
competitive spirit. We usually get the best product. So I didn't do that. And one of the reasons, too, we have to be cognizant is very few people do things for free, right?
Yeah.
So if we have everybody designing every project, it's going to add costs before we even start.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to reiterate, we should take advantage of the food that this allowances. We should, maximize. So if we could add kitchen, if we can add more equipment, let's just do it. That's just general point.
I agree. So,
Just one question, Mr. President.
Yeah.
So when we add the kitchens and the equipment, does that contract also include staffing, increase in staff, or is that separate than infrastructure?
no, so the way the contracts work is basically, they're our food service provider and they do it, but there's certain thresholds, numbers-wise. If they hit thresholds, then they reinvest certain dollar amounts back into the district. But those dollar amounts are restricted, so they can't just spend it on, like it'd be nice if we said, hey, pull up a couple trailers that are like food trucks or something that could, you can't do that. It's gotta be like literally the walls and this, like the cinder blocks, and then they come in and outfit it the way that they,
Right, so
So-
if they're selling more food and they need more staff, then they take that into account.
yeah, and most of the infrastructure issues we have isn't really about,
How many people
the
serve
volume
it.
of how many students they're serving. It's actually the convenience and to make their quality of life easier. And hopefully, as they grow their food service, they'll, get their costs down because they're going to be more efficient.
yeah. Just in answer to that question, the actual food service providers staff, that's Macio's, or whoever the vendor is, it's Macio's currently. To supervise students during the cafeteria, the lunchtime would be our staff, whether that's lunch aides or staff that has that duty for lunch.
Right.
Okay, I have a little question here.
Ms.
Okay,
White.
I'm looking on the, on this form here too, and where it gives us the option for John Adams. So option 1 is gym only, option 2 is gym and warming kitchen, option 3 is gym, warming kitchen, stage, and locker rooms. So now, option 2 would be the gym and the warming kitchen. It doesn't say anything about a stage, which I really don't think they need because they have that in the other, in the old part. The locker rooms, do they have them with the old gym? Or do they have to have a locker rooms? Or maybe we can ask them to just move locker rooms over to option 2, see if that was a possibility. But I would definitely go with option 2 because I do believe they need the warming kitchen. And it would be silly not to take advantage of Macio's will give us all of the, things to make it work. They definitely need the gym, for sure, but the locker rooms, I'm not so sure about.
You know what it made me think of something. This auxiliary gym has air conditioning, obviously, right?
Right.
Yes.
So I can't imagine having a stage in a non-air conditioned space. So
Yeah.
like when all the parents pile in to watch a concert and not to have AC, so like whatever new
Well, it's not
auxiliary gym we
included on
build.
here, Douglas, that's why I said it.
Right, but I'm saying like with this, I think
Ginny
it's-
wants option 2 to include a stage. I heard you.
I do,
Yeah,
I do,
yeah.
I want it. If
Right.
they can do it, it would be nice, really.
We could ask and see what that would cost to add a stage to option 2, is what I
Never
heard you
hurts
say,
to
right?
ask, right.
And not the locker rooms, but a stage. Is that what I heard?
Mm-hmm.
I think I can get that information and we can come back.
So regarding jams, we seem most interested in option 2 or 3,
Yeah.
and we want to explore if we do
2.
option, well, let's just say we do option 2 or 3, we want to explore potentially even going a little bit more, like Mr. Shi said, maybe some second floor additions, maybe some classrooms, maybe we're actually, a byproduct of this construction might be the ability to build up a little bit.
For
Okay.
future.
Is that correct?
For future. you-
Future, or if it's inexpensive to do now and we have the financing available and we're able to do it, maybe we could, unintended consequence of this could be something good.
Swap out the locker room with classrooms.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know.
I think what I'm hearing is, let me get more information, go back to them, talk about what we
Yeah.
said and come up with some potential costs, and then we could evaluate that, I think, on that.
So I think maybe the best way these committee meetings should work is that you provide us with this overarching, like, first stab at it. You kind of took our temperature as to what our thoughts are, and then you come back at our next meeting with a more fine-tuned version of these.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, to me.
Any other jams comments? Next, Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is another USA project. As a lot of us know that spend time at Woodrow Wilson, it's a beautiful building. It's very, very crowded, and where it's most crowded, it seems, is in common spaces. And although their gym is beautiful and the best one in the district in terms of middle schools, or maybe the best gym in the district, period, it's crowded.
I think Woodbrook Elementary School has the best
Woodbrook
middle
is
school
actually
gym.
beautiful. Yeah, Woodbrook has the best middle school gym. That's true. But, you know, it's crowded. So it's obvious we need to work on that. So let's talk about our options with Woodrow, which the options with Woodrow, option 1 was a gym only, 2 is the gym and warming kitchen, and option 3, it's very similar to our jams discussion. It's a little bit more money for the whole thing. Now, I would say, parlaying Mrs. White's comments, I personally do like the exploration of option 2.5, which would include a gym, a kitchen, and a stage. Although I would argue that Woodrow probably is in least need of a kitchen compared to the other buildings.
I would agree with that, and, you know, they had some issues with their kitchen, and it was more egress of getting the food in the lines and stuff, and that's being addressed this summer with some of the changes we're making. So I don't think that's as pressing a need there. They have a large space where the kids eat in that multi-purpose room.
Can we go back to
Yeah.
the drawing?
Option 1 for
Okay.
This one?
No, the one before that, the main. Yes, that one. So this is on the side of the building, and we're proposing that we put a warming kitchen on that one side over there by the gym.
No.
Right now, currently, when you're looking at their cafeteria, it's on this side, all the way to the far bottom, if you think, right there. So how are we looking at the logistics of them trying to get their warming kitchen and then bringing it to the cafeteria, which is all the way down this way? So my thing is, imagine if you moved all that back towards the back here. I know there's a baseball field on the side. I don't think would be encroaching on that area. Right now, there's a spot which is all empty, and if you just go out further in it, you'd have that space, and you'd be closer to having the proximity next to where the cafeteria is, and you'll have your warming kitchen much closer. Plus, your gymnasium will be, well, your main gym is on that side. You could utilize it differently with a lot of traffic flow actually dispersing in that way.
Something to look at. What, you know, when we talked to the architect, the best place to do any building was where we did already, right?
Right.
Those are those classrooms that were put in a couple of years ago, right before I got it. That was really the ideal space, except for the water main that ran through that nobody told us, but we took care of that for $100,000. But I don't know if you're aware of this or not, Mr. Patel, but there's some cricket pitches over here. So we want to make sure that we don't go into those as well as when we go into, there's a field right here. So
Yes.
when we looked at here, there was a couple of problems. One was this part right here. You really can't connect to that. You know, those are portable classrooms. They're permanent, but that's not a really good connection space. So you'd have to come off here.
Right.
And they do have soccer fields here. I believe there's a pitch, someone over here and someone over here. We don't want to go too far over that because then our soccer fields run into those, you know, permanent pitch areas, which are somewhat of a problem. It makes sense.
They're a little further in, by the way. They're further out, actually, versus where we're
But-
talking about. The
but-
soccer field, yes, I
No,
agree with
but
you.
if what would happen though is
Soccer
you would
field's
move
not-
the soccer field over more
Right,
and it would go into where the pitches are.
yeah.
And that-
Soccer field is right next to the building.
Right. If there's an opportunity though to put it in a different location, we could definitely do that and take a look at that. You know, and again, the architects were half joking. They said, this is the best spot right here. This is close to the cafeteria. You're right, Mr. Patel. That's where the current cafe is. The problem is the parking there. And they too have problems with wetlands around the building here. There's not a lot of areas where we could, you know, we own this field here. We own this space.
That trailer or that, what you call it?
Modular classroom.
Modular classroom, which looks like a trailer, but still, that should, if we had an option to move that on the other side and
No.
then bring that over here?
can't
You would have the
do that.
space and everything would work out perfectly. But in the real world, that would be awesome. We're like virtually in this world. That doesn't make any sense, but it's all good.
Well, so, on the back of the building, that we have all these woods and stuff, is that wetland?
Which one, way over here?
No.
Or over here?
No,
Side.
on the side, keep going up.
Over here?
No, keep,
Yeah.
yeah,
Over
yeah.
I think that's a problem, but we could look into that. That's where we have like a outside learning class area right here and stuff like that.
Nice.
But I will find out, but I'm almost 100% sure. This whole perimeter is wetlands. I think there's a creek that runs around here, right?
There's a nice bridge.
And then over here, I know
That
we looked
bridge is
at
on the other
this,
side.
the bridge is way down here, right?
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
a creek that runs there. We got the path that we put. I'll find out. I want to say it is wetlands, but I'll find out for sure.
How much space does it need to go out? Because we do have a little parking area in the back of the building, right? I don't know how far this building is gonna go.
This part over here, you mean? The parking we
Yeah,
use
you
over
can,
here?
yeah, you can park all the way, you can go all the way to
No,
the field. in
The
front of
building
back.
administrator said this parking here, while it's not used all the time, I think they use it for pickup and stuff though, where the kids drop off on arrival, that it's not used by staff during the day, but you know it's a nightmare getting in and out of Woodrow Wilson Drive.
You
So
open up Gloria.
I would love to, but that's beyond my capabilities. One day.
I would argue that this is the one building that we could probably do just a gym, and they would be, I know I started this whole thing with each building should have the warming kitchen and blah, blah, blah. But this is the one, if we were short on cash, this is the one that probably would benefit most from just a gym and no other amenities. Although I'd like to give everybody amenities.
I believe it's our newest building as well.
What if you take that empty space that you have in between the modular and, you know, the
No.
main building right there, and extend that aspect to, is there an opening there for, is there a
That's
doorway
very-
there? I believe
very
there's a doorway
small.
there, right?
It's very small.
There's doorways over here, but
Right.
this parking is all used during the
Yeah,
day.
that one's used.
For the most part. And we put bollards right here, right? I remember somebody actually backed into one of them not too long ago.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that. I went,
All right.
now I don't know where I'm at now.
There you go.
And I would concur with what was said about this building being one of the newest buildings we have, that the primary need is the auxiliary gym space. That their cafeteria manages, you know, like none of our buildings are not crowded because we have a lot of children, but they manage it well, and I think it has sufficient space. If we're going to spend more monies on other areas, I think maybe this is one that we give just the gym at this point.
You can leave the warming kitchen there if you want to, but just have to make a walkway type of thing from there to the cafeteria. That's something that you could easily fix. They would have to take it.
I agree with Mohit. Like, as much as I want to put kitchens on, it doesn't make sense to put a kitchen on the other side of the building, right? I mean, how about using some of the HVAC money to put AC in the current gym?
We can
So
make-
just build a gym only, and then
That's part of the plan. That's the thing with the energy savings. They're gonna hope they come back. They're gonna put AC for these, multi-purpose slash.
No, I'm not talking about the new gym we'd be building. I'm
Oh,
just
you're
talking
talking
about
about the old gym.
the actual beautiful
Right.
gym that Woodrow has.
Uh-huh.
Can we invest in cooling
Yeah.
for there in lieu of building more structure?
No, they would need the gym still. We would build a gym, you're saying?
Correct.
still?
Build
Build
a
a
gym,
gym.
But add additional instead
but
of.
since or maybe at Woodrow, the cafeteria is where the stage is, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we do the cooling there.
Would you be able to move that gym right where the old gym is, right next to it, so you'd have a whole huge gym space?
Well, that's what
And
I'm
you're
saying,
actually-
extending it, but
Right.
if it's a wetland, you can.
No,
get
I don't think
nowhere.
I don't think it's that much of a wetland. There's just trees basically at the moment over there.
No, there is. You have the little parking space.
Yeah.
Then they're probably.
Because that would make the
Four-car
bigger
wide.
sense, because
Yeah.
then you could expand the whole gym and you'd have a lot more space. And then you'd have options to work whatever you want on that other side too, in the future.
So would this board be in favor of doing just the gym and not the other amenities for Woodrow at this point?
Is the building principal okay with that, or this is what's her name?
Mrs. Blevins?
Yeah, Mrs. Blevins, she really is saying that, you know, kitchen is a problem, they need it. If that is a problem, then let's just build it, if they can survive it, you know.
I think it's working as it is. I think if you ask the principal, can I have more space for a building with 1,200 students in, they would say, yes, give me more space, give me more cafeteria, give me more everything if you had it, because that makes everything
But that
easier.
is the biggest, the middle school.
Yes.
In
It
the whole
is.
district,
And the newest.
yeah.
And it's a blue ribbon too, so you want to make sure you have the right amenities there as well.
You know, I'll find out from the principal, but we did have conversations ahead of time. And as we said earlier, I think their pressing need is that alternate space for the auxiliary gym. Cafeteria, they seem to be managing okay with as many kids as they have there. There were some changes they had to make in their lineage and how the kids got their food, and some of that infrastructure is budgeted from our money from Maggio's for this summer. So I think that problem will be fixed. But I take direction from all of you. Tell me what works best.
So between now and the next meeting, if you could get confirmation from the principal that, I would hate to move forward with just the gym and then we get feedback from the building that they knew better than we did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just in regards to all this that we're budgeting, can we put some allocation for fresh paint in some of the building
That
that you
should be
need?
budgeted
As
anyway.
well as the ceiling tiles? It's like beautiful ceiling tiles here, but you go there, it's like all dark and dingy, where the kids are actually looking to learn.
Different budget.
Yeah. Well,
Different budget, but you're right, that
Throw
should
it in,
always
throw it
be
in.
allocated, yeah.
Absolutely. Am I pursuing, Mr. Board President, also the cost for AC in the current gym space? In the current cafeteria?
I mean, that was an idea,
Can we put
I-
that, that's the energy savings thing?
yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense to do that.
Instead of additional, and see if we can use that money to cover
Okay.
that.
So,
I'm not
for
asking
anybody
for
listening to
additional
us, we're talking about the energy savings plan, which is the ESIP, and we've been working via the Budget Planning and Oversight Committee, Mr. Patel, and we're about to have another meeting about that, probably in 2 weeks-ish.
Yeah, it's
I believe
about
it's May 31st. On the ESCO one is June 6th.
Yeah, so what we're doing is working with an energy company to make sure that we're getting all of our utilities upgraded in the district, and they're doing an energy grade audit for us. And part of that, I think, can include cooling. I mean, any large gathering space
Yeah.
where parents are coming to see their students perform or graduate or any of that cool stuff, I think a fair expectation in 2022 should be air conditioning.
Okay.
Dr. Brigham, I really hope that we can add some space to the back of the current gym, because talking about graduation and stuff that's coming up, we heard
That'd be
some,
perfect.
Which building are you talking about?
most of
all of
these
Oh.
middle school buildings, if we can just extend it, 'cause we did have issues with graduation or what promotion, whatever you want to call it, from middle school. So,
Okay, next we have Herbert Hoover Middle School. If I'm in the right order, I apologize if I'm not. We briefly touched on this.
They need the gym.
What we have here is a new gymnasium, which would be $4.35 million on the high side with a $450,000 warming kitchen addition. This was a DMR project. Seems to make a lot of sense without much flexibility on that property to do much else, it doesn't sound like. Remember, the same property is the one that houses a lot of vehicles and our new bus lot and everything else, so. Let's talk about this. Does anybody on the board have any objection or support for this part of the project? Just to reiterate, that cafeteria has a beautiful stage area. This would be another one to look at in terms of cooling for that cafeteria and stage, for the same reasons we just discussed. But in general, I think that gym area would be wonderful.
Yes.
fresh paint and ceiling tiles as well.
Here's a question. I should have asked this. These gyms, these basketball courts are regulation courts?
Yes.
Because a lot of the middle schools now have short courts. Yeah, okay.
I
Good.
forget what it is, 96 feet, whatever.
It says 96.8, but I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the whole thing, or I don't even know how.
Yeah, that's spec'd out to the size it should be for the court.
can we, okay. Yeah, so I think there is space here, if they wanna put a kitchen thing, between this little open area.
Yeah, they said they could do the kitchen area.
450,000 is, yeah, that's a no-brainer.
They didn't add it originally, that was my fault. They got that to me today when I inquired about it.
And it would make sense because it's right next to the cafeteria too, so you could actually easy, logistics there for them.
Now, bleachers in these gymnasiums, or is that something, a detail that we work out later?
Well, that would be a larger space. I think this one might include a little bit.
Is that the bleacher on the bottom?
I'll find out exactly
line?
what that was, but we didn't include that in the other ones. That would be a larger footprint and a larger space if you want to have all those bleachers.
Yes.
I do believe some type of bleachers in the gym would benefit our students if they wanted to, especially the coaches, they want to put tournaments together, raise money for their programs. Without that bleachers, there's winter programs, indoor soccer, futsal, different programs that you just need some kind of place for the spectators, or else they become part of the game, and that's never good.
Yeah, I would agree that if we could,
Bleachers? Okay.
yeah, we have bleachers, actually, the bleachers at Hoover and Jams and everything are quite nice. A lot nicer than the court.
I'll make a note to make sure that, I'll find out 100% on it.
We don't have a lot of bleachers at Hoover, though. I think maybe 2.
Any other board comments on Herbert Hoover? That one was pretty self-explanatory. Thomas Jefferson, this one's a little bit more complicated. This is a DMR project, just to remind everyone. Some of the priorities as we discussed the first meeting. Obviously a new gym and stage area, but also that front entrance, we called it an office suite, which might have been a little bit too swanky verbiage, but a suite, office suite, meaning, if you go in there and you just see how our administrators and our administrative staff is squeezed into that area, and especially for security reasons. I mean, right now, you walk in and there's a security officer in a hallway at a desk. It's just not appropriate for 2022. We need a little bit more safety and security for our students. And this construction would allow for a more robust area to welcome the students and families of TJ. I thought when we originally talked about this that we'd be actually closing in the courtyard area. I'm surprised to see the courtyard still exists. At minimum, that courtyard needs a huge rehab, so I don't know if that's included with this, but my gut, being a layman looking at that, the bottleneck in TJ is that corridor that you see there, going from one part of the building to the other. Not that one, but the one in the middle there. Yeah. So it would actually be great to see less courtyard, more common space there, lobby area, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's possible. That might be a bigger ticket item.
Well, we can go back to them and revisit that. We did mention that. Maybe I wasn't as specific to that. I know that's kind of an eyesore as it is now, but if we could repurpose that and make it more part of an enclosed area, that would, as you said, that's that walkway with the glass on both sides. That's pretty narrow.
Well, at the teaching in the front, you actually have some space. You can push the office up. I think that's what the design is, right? You can push it more up toward the front.
It seems like they came,
you
right.
do have space.
Right.
So to your point, they came all the way out to the bus lane.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's not in line with the building anymore. You're right.
So,
That's probably a lot less expensive way to do it.
And you talk about circulation, again, it's circulation, right? Because you look at the picture, it's right in the middle, it's right over there. So when you add this new corridor on the top, is it possible we can build something across so you can
This
have
way?
another? Yeah, somewhere out on the top, you can build another one that's connecting. I don't know.
I think there's a gradient issue here. I got to
Okay.
make sure that it goes down right here. This is the glass walkway, and I think this is a drop here. Mr. Culibus, you know off the top of your head?
Oh,
So,
okay,
and
that's
this,
right.
if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
remember,
yeah,
the
yeah,
downstairs part of this building is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
almost
yeah.
in the ground.
That's right.
Yeah,
You're
it's
right. Yeah,
interesting.
If you
Yeah.
build a bridge, they'll use it.
They will. But I think, as the board president said, maybe we asked them to go back and take a look at this area to maybe repurpose this. Maybe I wasn't as clear.
This building could be a money pit. I mean, this is the oldest, I think, the oldest building, right? So,
It's an investment. So it's-
1959, I think
Yeah,
Edison
so-
High is 55.
so I could imagine that once you start trying to connect things that are old to new and everything, I'm sure it's a mess. So the way they did it here might be the least expensive way to do it. So,
Yeah,
you know,
we could revisit this one and
we might as well ask them.
get more input. You know, the key to this one was they wanted to renovate this cafeteria area here and blow the stage up to make that a larger area there, and then have more room over here with the stage and the larger gymnasium. So I can go back to the drawing board and ask for that.
Will they have enough space? You know, you take out the stage area, will they have enough space for kids to eat there?
I believe so, in there.
Okay.
I do.
This just brought up, Board President, if I could add.
Yes.
In regards to JB Stevens, you know we had that reading garden or whatever it is over there too, that we were looking at taking out the 2 classrooms to create a corridor so we could have ease of flow. Since we're doing the project and we're able to see if they could try to do that as well, this way actually it will help with the flow of all the traffic along with the extra classrooms. Because we're adding additional 3 compared to what USA is giving us, might as well utilize the 2 that we would lose out for making that corridor. But you would actually have that flow that we're looking for, and it would help out.
We could look into it.
Let's make sure these dimensions are okay, because I use my Google here. 91.86 feet is a basketball court, unless I'm Googling the wrong thing.
What'd you say it was?
91.86. This here, the dimension of the addition says 96.8, so it just doesn't seem right to me.
I'll find out.
So maybe they're using they're allocating some sort of junior size court, which doesn't make any, I mean, we should make it a regulation court, all of these middle schools.
Okay. I'll make sure.
I mean, it's a matter of a few feet. It's not gonna raise the cost that much.
NBA.com.
Yeah. If it's Wikipedia, it must be true. But does anybody have any feedback on TJ specifically? Any feedback? Okay. So,
We don't have options for this. He just won.
Yeah, there weren't really many options there with the footprint. There's not a lot to do there. And again, when I spoke to DMR, the addition of knocking that and renovating that stage area in the current cafeteria negates the need for a separate warming kitchen. But then you make the new stage over where the new gym is. I think the question that I would have is, as the board president said, is that courtyard area. I know they came out of the building. Is there a way to come maybe into that area and expand that single corridor? You could just by visually looking at it here, it's the skinniest hallway in the building.
maybe it's a non-issue, maybe the building principal could weigh in, or, I
Okay.
mean,
How-
just,
How about the extended sidewalk that you see over there? Is that something that is utilized on a daily basis, like a lot?
Which
Or-
one?
In front.
Right there. If you go by
Here?
the expansion, no, right there, before the courtyard, in front, right there, yeah. So, is that utilized as much? If not, you could actually push your offices and everything a little bit further out, and you could actually open up the courtyard too if you wanted, if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I
over
think
there.
we want to look into that, right? The kids come off the bus there, and that's where the little bus covering is there, and they come in here. But we could look at all that.
Okay.
okay. Do you have enough direction to get from this meeting to the next one?
I think so.
Don't forget the classrooms at the elementary schools, that's very important. Any other board member comments until I turn it over to any public comments?
Just additional for the JP Stevens, like I said, in regards to that courtyard, if you could open up the flow with the 2 classrooms that we were discussing, if that could be added on to this proposal and see if that's something that could be worked out, it would actually ease the flow as much as possible.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bragan.
All right.
Nice job. A lot of homework here.
Thank you.
You got an A for this time. Please,
I thought he said he got an A+. You're a
no,
tough
there's,
grader.
there's always room. I would like to open it to public comments if you have any. Ms. Spadovsky? Welcome here.
First, I think Dr. Bregan should actually get a gold star for his presentation and handling the whole group. And I just had one thing. Mrs. Conway, today is Mrs. Conway's birthday. And she was going to try to make it here, but I don't think she's going to. And I know one thing she would bring up is years ago when we were working on another edition and another fundraising and all of that, before most of you, or many of you were here, they took a group of people on the committee, people on the staff, and people from the community, and they went on tours around the different buildings, and they looked to see when you're at Hoover and you're going down that little hall from there to there, what is it really like as opposed to on paper? And I think a lot of the questions where you're maybe disagreeing on seem like they're things like, oh my God, the Woodbrooks gym is really good, but then when they first got there, the tiles were coming up. So, I remember how everyone was so concerned about that, and now it's like the most beautiful place in the world. But the different schools in reality, if you see them. Now, if you in those days had wanted to come see me, I taught in the cave at Woodbrook, which is a cinder block all the way around area. And then down in the little dogleg in the back of the cave is where I actually taught. And when they started making emergency plans after 9/11 on how you would escape from the building and things like that, and I'm surrounded by cinder blocks all around. Like, it doesn't really matter what you say, in, out, whatever, I can't come out. So the reality of seeing the people in there and seeing why are those 6 teachers with 3 kids each teaching in the hall? That might give you some more answers on where we could tweak those little things you're talking about, like the cafeteria. Because I've been in all the schools, and most of them I've seen with students in there. And I know that at Hoover, it's probably the one where I felt most like, how are they all going to fit down that hallway? Or how are we all going to get out of this gym? And I still remember Mrs. Emden saying, the whole school is sitting in these bleachers in the gym. And it's like a Friday at the end of this very wonderful presentation. And she said, and now, boys and girls, when I call your homeroom, you will stand. And from, in this order, you will proceed down the stairs and out. And when one class went, she would call the next class. So she was used to the bedlam that would ensue if you didn't move those kids out carefully. And I just always wonder, then when they got to that little bridge thing, was someone there controlling them? And so I just think that maybe if you saw it in process, you might have a better grasp of what we're talking about on the cafeterias or the locker rooms. And when I was in high school, we did have to take showers. But, all the different things about if nobody uses showers or lockers, then maybe you don't need them. That time when they took people on the tour, what was in the shower rooms were wrestling mats. I think that's where they stored the wrestling mats. So, the reality and what's on paper in the school officially, maybe if a group of you formed a committee and wanted to check those things out, it might give you a better grip on the things you're disagreeing on. That's all. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms.
Sounds good.
Spadovsky. A concerned citizen just alerted me that it's 84 feet, I believe, is a high school basketball court, so it's not what a NBA court would be. So maybe these dimensions are correct. I'm just a board president. I don't know about architecture. All right, very good. Any other feedback before I adjourn? Mr. Patel.
Just real quick, we were discussing last meeting in regards to when we're looking for a referendum or a bond, actually not a referendum, but going out for more money to expand on some of these projects. I was wondering if we looked into that a little more, or is there some more research that needs to be done, or is the new bond person that's going to be coming in going to look into that for us?
Dr. Bregan?
I spoke with the board president. We're going to put out an RFQ for a financial advisor, which would be the person who would help solidify what type of bonds and the rates and all that, and then actually put them out to bid when you go to
And
them.
bond counsel.
And then, that was the second one. And then the second RFQ was for the actual bond counsel. And so once we secure both of those, we'll have those robust conversations, maybe via committee with the Budget Oversight and Planning, if not here, and to talk about what our options are. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the reason why I say is inflation's going up like crazy, and it would behoove us to take advantage of all the monies that we can allocate ourselves to. Thank you.
Agreed.
Good. Any other feedback?
Yeah, talking about fundraising, it just reminded me of something, that we're building a beautiful auditorium in Edison High School. And Mrs. White mentioned to me before, they had this fundraising, you can buy certain seats
Yes.
and have your name, little plaque, at the entrance. So I don't know if this board will look into it, because the beautiful auditorium's coming up, these new seats are being put up, maybe $200, $300, you can get a plate and, put it on the seat to support the auditorium.
Does this board, do we have a fundraising mechanism? I
No.
mean, is that something that we're allowed to do?
I don't have that answer. I'll have to check on that.
Douglas?
We don't have a foundation.
I
or
know there
something
are
like that.
foundations that exist. Ms. White?
Douglas, back in the day, some of you will remember this, when Carol Toth was, I think she was a vice principal at Edison High School, and she started this project, Save Our Seats.
Save all seats there.
And I think she did it for Edison High, and I believe she did it for JP as well, or maybe, JP always took their own initiative, but she did it for Edison High, and it worked out very well. And she went to different, they reached out to different businesses and different groups, and I think if you go into the high school in that main lobby there on the wall, it has a list of all the people who did those donations, and that's how they got the seats for the auditorium at that point in time. So I don't know how she actually did it. It was magical, I think, and it worked out very well. So it might be something to look into.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Plus, you'll have more funding to do other extra stuff, like stage setups in all different schools and so forth. I agree with
Very
that.
good.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion, no.
Okay. With no further comment, I'll adjourn the meeting. Good?
All right.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.